right here, 1,000 feet in 1.2 miles. And right down there is home. So a nice climb, but then it's going to be a fun downhill. I'm going to do the loop today, so I have a little bit steadier, not quite as steep downhill to work on my downhill, which most runners, many runners, when they hear downhill, they think, oh, that's bad for my knees, or I beat up my quads so much that I have struggled with my downhills. Well, we're going to take care of that today. We're going to talk about a very simple technique, not only for you to dial into your downhill form, but also to help if you trip a lot on rocks on trail. So I'm going to finish this out though. And all that snow I talked about on the last video, well, it's all gone. Until we get up high. One of my athletes is doing the MyWatt 100K this weekend in California. Early season race for his major goal race of the Wasatch 100 in September. Ooh, a little bit of shade. Anyways, MyWatt, it's just kind of rolly, nice and fast, buffed California trail. And our whole focus is 40-mile warm-up, 22-mile race, with the goal to make the last 22-mile average pace as fast as his first 40, which is meant to keep him patient during that first 40. And during that, we're focused on keeping a heart rate at a certain ceiling on the uphills, doing a hike-run combination, and then applying all his downhill training on the downhills to take advantage of the terrain and gravity, but keeping good form, keeping his legs feeling good, and not overextending himself from an exertion standpoint and from an overreaching or overstriding, which is so common on downhills. He's had some IT band trouble, and we've really worked on pulling his foot strike in underneath him on the downhills to avoid that IT band trouble, which is a lot of times the culprit of IT band trouble. There's just so much deer scat. This is why it's such prime mountain lion country. And someday, Troy, I'm gonna see one. All right, so now basically gonna head off trail and just looking to hit that ridge right up there. So I'm just gonna go off trail and hit the ridge so I get the high ridge, and going all the way over and then down right in between me and this little industrial park on the way home. I have another new athlete this year doing a 6-hour race this weekend. The goal of this entire 6-hour race is to have the last 3 hours on pace as her first 3. So for her, we're really working on having patience early in the race. She's relatively new to ultra racing, and I want her to focus on understanding what it needs to take to be patient early to be able to finish well. So by having a goal for the last half of the race to have the same pace as the first half, hopefully that's going to allow her the mindfulness to be patient early in the race, because what, right? The most common mistake we make, aside from overstriding, but in racing, is going out too hard, especially in ultras, when even too hard still feels easy. Nothing like Wyoming sagebrush. All right, I'm having to pick my way in between the snow and the sagebrush to kind of find a good path. And this also goes into our strategy with my Watt 100K racer this weekend. Mentioned his goal was to manage his uphill travel during the first 40 miles so he's able to finish well, focusing on the downhill. Our strategy and goal for that first 40 miles on the uphill is to consistently read the terrain. I told him, hey, look down like you normally do when you're running trails, but then occasionally look 5, 6, 7, 8 feet in front of you, see what's coming up so you can make a moment-to-moment decision whether to hike or run based on your heart rate. And this is a common mistake runners make, is that they think, oh, now is just, I've decided to hike, and they turn off their brain and there's decisions, and just make it a one decision episode where then they just hike from there, where there's sections where they're able to run. So his goal is to continuously, moment to moment, read the terrain, making moment to moment decisions whether to hike or run based on the terrain. And I told him this means maybe you make a decision for 6, 7, 8 steps of running, and then back into a hike for 6, 7, 8 steps, and then back into a run. So it's always staying in the moment. This pulls you into the moment and forces you to think about what you're doing in the moment rather than thinking too far ahead. That can get us into trouble. It's not just one decision. It's moment to moment, constant reading of the terrain to manage your effort based on what the terrain is throwing at you. Like sagebrush and snow. Okay, Troy, we've got our first mountain lion track sighting of the year. Take a look. Pretty big one. Good track too, in the mud. There's another one. Kind of interesting. I don't see any other visible tracks, and it's quite muddy here. It was right in there. Well, maybe last year's kill. Made it to the ridge. Normally I come down here, but just on the back side of this little hump here is all that snow that I had to go around. So this is pretty clean. That's good to know. But I came down through this way on a lower section through here. But now I'm up on the ridge and gonna have some snow travel, but that's all right. Then we're gonna talk downhill. right, there's my downhill. Headed down the ridge and all the way around. It's not too bad up here. Feels pretty good. First time this year. So I'm gonna tuck in behind here and get out of the wind, and we're gonna talk about this downhill. There we go. Most common mistake I see, I get this asked all the time, is overstriding. Leads to IG band trouble, leads to all the dysfunction that we kind of been brainwashed to think is par for the course with running. But that's especially compounded on the downhill when gravity can pull us into our mistake, where again, gravity's pulling us. It's much easier to overstride and reach out because one, we get the sensation of having to brake our speed because of the downhill, and we're not pulling our foot through high enough to take up time to land more underneath us or on our forefoot and midfoot. So overstriding on the downhill does a couple things. When we reach out in front to brake, we heel strike, places a lot of stress, got a bug on the frame, on the quads. So again, that's why you're gonna trash the quads if you're overstriding a lot of the time, running too hard while overstriding. Again, it's gonna trash the quads and just lead to diminishing returns later on your long run or your race. And when we heel strike, like I mentioned, we're overworking that quad. That's where the IT band gets tight, starts giving you trouble on the side of the knee. This also, since we're not using our glutes for stability as much because we're overusing the quad, our hip flexors have to be called in to help stabilize. And that's not their job. Their job is just to lift the leg. And so that's how the hip flexors can get overworked and get tight. And speaking of lifting the legs, this is what we want to talk about that will help you not to overstride on the downhill. Is that once we strike the ground, we want to pull that leg through with your foot coming maybe about calf height, and almost like you're cycling your legs like a bicycle. And what this is doing by lifting that foot and pulling that foot through a little bit higher off the ground to strike the ground, it's causing the leg to take up time. So you land with your forefoot and your midfoot. It's because gravity is pulling you, your leg will come through much quicker if you keep it close to the ground, and you have no choice but to heel strike because your foot's already there and you have to extend it just to land. So we need to take up some time. We need to pause things, and that happens through cycling your foot and taking your foot a little bit higher as you pull it through to strike the ground. Now, again, that's taking up time, and as your body comes through going downhill, then you're able to land and strike with your forefoot and your midfoot. Okay, so think about cycling your legs just like riding a bicycle, and that will help you to also navigate over any rocks, any stumps, any roots that you have that you maybe find yourself tripping because you're keeping that leg too low. And again, it's the leg's coming through too quickly, and it has no choice but to extend and heel strike and cause all the trouble we just talked about. So try cycling your legs like a bicycle and see how that helps. It'll quicken your cadence as well. It'll put more stress on your glutes for stability, which is a good thing. It'll just distribute all the muscle usage, and you'll feel so much better because you're not trashing your body. But with this, it comes practice, just like anything, right? And do this early season, slowing way down to practice it so you're able to go slow enough and not be forced to brake and heel strike to kind of slow yourself down. So if you're forced to heel strike, lift that leg when you pull it through a little bit higher and quicken your cadence and slow down so you're not having to brake and heel strike. Over and out from Adams Ridge. First time this year and Born to Run World. See you guys next time.